Legal challenges continue. What's the rush, libs? Let's let the process work. Plus, Georgia doing a hand recount. Other states may have ballots tossed. What a Biden immigration policy looks like. And COVID lockdowns are looming. Welcome, my friends, to the Sexton Show. Thanks so much for being here. It's a strange time in our politics, isn't it? We can't seem to get a clear answer from the libs as to whether they want unity, want to bring us all together, or want to silence, want to purge, want to punish us for being over 70 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump this time around. You know, Trump got more votes after being president, millions more votes after being president for 4 years. So their whole referendum on how evil he is and how terrible he is didn't really work out quite the way they thought it would. Yeah, maybe they still end up squeaking out barely in a pandemic year an election win. I mean, this is a little bit like winning the Super Bowl in the middle of a hurricane. Technically, I guess you win, but it's not really a normal contest. But there's all this rush now. Oh, why won't he concede? Well, as I've told you, if he conceded while there were still legal challenges going on, they'd accuse him of being duplicitous. They would say that he's being dishonest and that we can't trust his word, which they already say. They say he lies all the time. Once you've gone to a place where the entire Democrat Party and the media has been for 4 years now, of asserting that a person has no honor, no integrity, and you repeat it a million times, you can't then turn around and try to leverage the "we will think less of you unless you do what we say" routine. That's what the libs are doing right now. It's not going to work. Why the rush? Keep asking yourself that question. Remember when they tried that during the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation process? And they also used polls. That's right, polls in the early days to show that the American people did not want her to be on the Supreme Court. Then the hearings happened, which is actually the constitutional process, and turned out the polls switched pretty dramatically in favor of ACB. But they were saying, why the rush? There was no rush. They had the hearings. It was fine. She was qualified. It's all constitutional. It is the process. And it matters. Right now, we are still very much within completely acceptable, completely normal parameters in terms of process. No one's gone around it or outside it in the Trump campaign. We already know that there are such narrow margins in some places that there will be recounts triggered. Wisconsin, Georgia's going to do a recount by hand. And this will likely change hundreds, if not thousands, of votes in those states, perhaps more. Let's see. So what is the purpose of, say, the Karl Rove op-ed in the Wall Street Journal? Don't ever forget, Karl Rove was the guy who ran around Fox News like a maniac with his little whiteboard saying that Mitt Romney hadn't really lost in 2012. Karl Rove is in many ways the epitome, the quintessential establishment Republican. He's a guy that wants to return to the old era where there are very well-paid consultants and TV commentators who go in and out of administrations for all of their political expertise, like, of course, Karl Rove. And when they lose and when Republicans don't actually enact any policies that are conservative and when there's no mandate for them to do very much at all, you know, at least we do it in a gentlemanly fashion, Romney style. Lose, get slapped around, but then say, sorry, I hurt your hand afterwards with my face. That was the GOP approach before Trump. I know. I've seen it. You've seen it. Karl Rove wants us to go back to that because some people do very well in that system. They get on board seats. They get seven-figure contributor deals at major cable networks. They are still, while opposed by the other side of the aisle, it's understood that they're one of the players. It's understood that they're at the big boy table. They need panic. They need fear. That's why they love the COVID pandemic so much as a political tool. They need to leverage the fear that people have so they can get what they want. So they trot out all of these either deep staters or rhinos, and of course the entire Democrat-aligned media is all speaking with one voice on this, saying that this is unprecedented. False. That's actually one of the favorite tropes, one of the things that the left has always done about Trump that is so transparently dishonest. They'll say something's unprecedented, and then we find a precedent, but it takes maybe a few hours, maybe a day or two before we start actually hearing from the other side about how, no, there is a precedent for what Trump did. And then they just move on. Pretend like they never said that. It didn't happen. It's just attack and then move to the next one. You know, they show up, they do damage, they're dishonest about it, and then they look for the next target. The narrative you're told about 2000 is the Supreme Court just handed the election to Al Gore. The reality is that state law in Florida and the regulations that were in place from the Florida state legislature were, look, if you're going to do a recount, you can't just pick a place you think you might get more Democrat votes and then block a place where you think there might be more Republican votes. You're going to do a recount, it's got to be statewide. You're determining who won that state. You don't get to pick and choose the places that'll work for you, maybe, and shut out the other ones. That was the Al Gore team's strategy. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Sorry, the results are the results. There's never been a count ever of any kind that showed Al Gore ahead. Was he ruining our democracy? No, of course not. So what exactly is the argument here? It's all rhetoric, friends. Rhetoric meant to frighten people into thinking we're in some crisis of democracy. There's no crisis. We got lawyers bringing challenges in court to find out who won this election. At the end of it, yeah, very real chance that we'll find out that Donald Trump didn't win. And maybe that means, and I understand this, that we just aren't able to prove a lot of fraud that did happen. I think that's a likely outcome, to be honest with you, that there'll be a lot of fraud, even if we find some that we never find out about. How do you prove this stuff? Well, what are we going to do? We're going to start doing fingerprint analysis and handwriting analysis on millions and millions of ballots, right? To see if we can find 5,000 here or 10,000 there that are fraudulent or that weren't actually signed and voted for by the people that are supposed to be. I don't think that's going to work. I know the Trump campaign suing in Michigan to have over 1 million ballots looked at very closely, perhaps even thrown out. I know that they're doing a hand recount in Georgia, that Pennsylvania, something stinks. And here's the other part of this. We should remember what the media has done to us in the past. We should remember that they do not act in good faith as we go through this process, because they are trying to use the good faith of conservatives against them right now. Come on, just do what we say. It's about our democracy. It's about a peaceful transition of power. This is what the founding fathers would want. They're playing this game. They're poking with all this. Meanwhile, they didn't accept the 2016 election, and it went beyond just words. They schemed in the deep state to create the grounds for a special counsel investigation, the Russia collusion investigation. They sent people to prison because of it, all based on lies. Democrat paid for lies, Hillary's DNC, as we all know. They didn't accept at all. In fact, that was a real internal coup effort. And yet they're referring to this now as a coup because we won't cave, because we won't bend the knee. Why? Why would we do that? What benefit is there? If you read Karl Rove's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, the question that you should ask him is, okay, Karl, so what? What are you trying? But he wants that pat on the head from the establishment. You want that, okay, you're not what you want, a Wall Street Journal editorial, right? Oh, you're one of the good ones. You're not one of those Trump dead enders. Sorry. There are about 72 million Trump dead enders out there who want to know what really happened here. You know what the worst case scenario is? The worst case scenario is that the Trump team brings these legal challenges, they go through the courts, they're unsuccessful, and then the Biden administration takes over. And that could be pretty bad for America, but in terms of the system, it's exactly the way it's supposed to work. The founders built in all kinds of safeguards and additional pathways. Even if we had a 269 to 269 tie, which we won't, but even if that had happened, there's a way to get out of that gridlock. The House of Representatives intervenes. And if the House of Representatives can't figure this out, eventually the president of the Senate comes in. I mean, there are processes here. And we're going through them because that's what we have. And we all operate within that framework. Don't trust the people who are telling you that your vote as a Trump voter, that your political beliefs as somebody who supports this administration don't deserve due process and don't deserve their day in court. Says who? On what basis? They're trying to bully you. They rejected 2016. The Democrats rejected that election. They tried to use a coup to get rid of the president, and now they want to bully you by saying, come on, operate in good faith. Just concede. Just bend the knee. What have we learned in the Trump era? With the left, when you bend the knee, they just take your head. They say, thank you for your confession. Now we take you out and punish you even more because you've agreed about your wrongness. No advantage, no benefit, no reason to do it. Don't give them what they want. Let's see. If they were being honest, you know what they would say? Okay, we're happy because this will just solidify the mandate that they're going to claim, even though it's a razor-thin election victory for Biden no matter what. This will solidify his mandate by we went through these checks, we looked for fraud, didn't find any. Now, of course, there is some fraud. People have been talking about this for days. I had Sean Parnell on the show. He's in Pennsylvania. He says that they found, even in his one congressional district, dead people voting. Dead people voting is something that needs to be explained. The people in the media that are saying there's no fraud, there's nothing to see here, there's no problem, they need to explain how a dead person votes. Because unless they can do that, there is fraud. So their initial premise that there's zero fraud, I know the New York Times front page yesterday says officials find zero fraud nationwide. That's a lie. And when people lie to you, and when they've acted in bad faith and expect you to act in good faith when it's in their interests, we give up when the process is done and we get answers one way or another. Until then, everything else they're saying and doing in the media, all these Democrats that are claiming that this is a coup, it's just noise. It's noise from people who don't have better arguments to make and are so emotionally invested in the defeat of Donald Trump that they don't care how much they're embarrassing themselves, their credibility, all of it. That's what we see now. We keep the fight going. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better hope this crime never happens to you. Even better, take precaution today so it doesn't. You might not even know what this is. So let me tell you. Home title theft is when cyber thieves find your home's title because it's online, it's up in the cloud, it's stored on servers. And then they use a quitclaim deed. They kick you off, put themselves on the title to your home. Then they take out loans against the equity in your home. This can financially ruin you. Often you won't find out about it until you receive the payment notices in the mail or perhaps even a foreclosure notice for your home. Take action today with Home Title Lock. Home Title Lock will create a virtual barrier around your home's title. All you have to do is go to HometitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection, and you can check online to see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't know it. HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. Take action today to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock.
He's going to continue to tweet. He's going to continue to drive the information flow across the vast propaganda networks that have supported and surrounded him. He'll be a tremendously pernicious force in this country for a long time to come. I mean, Stephanie, it is definitely feels more like Moon over Parador, the movie, than it does a real coup. But this is a coup of sorts. We've never seen this in this country. This is a legitimate election, a fair election. Joe Biden has won the election. In every other year in the modern history of the country, the losing presidential candidate would have called, would have conceded. Everyone would have acknowledged it, and on we go. Right? That's what we do in America. But so this is an outrageous situation.
But, Steve, it's not a coup. It's cuckoo.
Oh, ha-ha, so clever. Schmidt used to be a GOP consultant. He comes from that Karl Rove school. Who writes the biggest check? That's what I stand for. Yeah. Steve Schmidt, everybody. Now part of the Lincoln Project. You know what the Lincoln Project did earlier this week? shared from their Twitter account. Remember, they raised all this left-wing money and have bought all this publicity and media with leftist money that's meant to, destroy what Republicans are supposed to believe this country is all about. So they use that money. I mean, effectively, think of it like taking money from George Soros to represent yourself as the real conservative. That's what the Lincoln Project's all about. Oh, Trump's words are so scary. What has he done that is coup-like? Has he sent out the Secret Service to arrest people that are speaking out against him? I mean, they refer to Trump as a dictator and a fascist and say he won't leave. He's the first dictator in history whom everybody in the media who speaks out against advances their career and takes zero risk whatsoever professionally, never mind to their safety. Nothing but upside to being a Trump trasher in the media. And he's a fascist? Do they know anything about fascists? Again, these people are venal and clownish and just dumb. Don't say, oh, but Buck, why have they been able to create these platforms for themselves? Why has the Lincoln Project, why have these other people who go on MSNBC and say that they were, Bush administration officials and now they're trashing Trump? How have they gotten where they are? If you have no scruples, if you have no decency, morals, or ethics, you have a lot of latitude. You have a lot of ability to maneuver to benefit yourself. That's what's going on here. There's nothing impressive about it. It's like being the most vicious, ruthless thug on the block. It's not the same thing as building Microsoft from the ground up, even if you do turn into a profitable venture as a drug kingpin, let's say. It's not because you're some genius. But a coup, how? It's within the legal process, and no one who knows the law of the Constitution would say otherwise. You're really seeing who these individuals are in the media and in politics today. You're seeing what their character is, their lack of character, really, as they think they've gotten this huge victory of a Biden presidency. And if they could only just wait a few weeks, it may be the case. I'm not sitting here telling you that these legal challenges have worked. I'm telling you we need to take these challenges as far as they can go. We need to understand what happened. There's a lot of fishy stuff here. And they can tell you it's not, but they're lying. Just like they lied about Trump being a Russian stooge. I remember who these people are. I remember what the opposition did to this president. I'm not forgiving. I'm not forgetting. Because they largely got away with it, friends. So now that they think things are going their way, it's all, hey, why can't we all get along? Be unified. Which means shut up and do what we tell you. No, I say I'd rather not. I'd rather not. Here's a classic moment with Bro Cuomo. He's a journalist. And a weightlifting enthusiast. Play clip 4.
This goes way beyond Trump. Trump is toxic. Surprise. However, the real surprise is the blame that must be put on those who ignore and therefore empower. And those who say this should just run its course. Running its course means transition. And they know it. I'm telling you, remember the people who are enabling this fraud. They must answer for defending Trump's delusions. They are remaining silent when it matters most. Most Republicans in Washington, did you know, they won't even say President-elect Biden in public? You know who else is doing that? Vladimir Putin, President Xi, and Kim Jong-un. Great company.
Oh, that's right. It transitions right away. If you don't agree to call it for Biden already with these, they're razor-thin margins, folks, in a lot of these states. You look at them, we're talking 10,000 votes, 15,000 votes. This could swing a state. Look at Arizona. Of course, Arizona was called way too early. Also would have changed the whole perception, too. Imagine going into election night, if Trump had won Arizona, if Trump hadn't had Arizona called for Biden, it would have shifted our whole perception of how plausible it was to fight it out in some of these late counting states. But yeah, Fox made its call. It was the wrong call, obviously. They didn't know. Now they're just praying they end up being right just by luck. There was no mathematical projection they could have looked at to show that Arizona went for Biden. But I have to love this. A CNN anchor telling us that if you won't cave, if you won't give in, you're basically doing Russia and North Korea and China's work for them. First of all, if you're going to have Joe Biden as president, I would stay away from talking about selling out to China. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good move. We're not going to forget about the Hunter Biden stuff. I will tell you, though, as I said all along, that the media blackout on that worked. The only people that heard about that were conservatives, and the only people that cared were conservatives. There was not a single person you can point to or find who says, oh, wow, Hunter Biden is a screw-up who was trying to sell out his country and use his dad for access, and Joe Biden knew about it and said, I'm going to vote for the other guy. I don't know of a single case of it. Maybe it happened, but huge conservative media fixation on this, and it does remind me of other times when what gets ratings for the conservative audience doesn't always move the needle in politics. You see, what was working was Trump policies that were appealing to Black and Latino voters in unprecedented numbers in my lifetime for the GOP. There were other ways to go at this, turning out more of the white working class vote in these key states. And that should have been more of a focus, more of a messaging appeal. But we spent a lot of time on the Hunter Biden stuff anyway. I try to tell people, I said it all along. I did. I said, it's interesting. We'll cover it. It's worth knowing about, but it's not going to move any votes. So you got Broke Cuomo saying you're doing what the dictators, the foreign dictators. Who cares whether they call Joe Biden the president-elect or not? And this whole idea that they're going to remember, they're going to hold us accountable. Okay, you know what, CNN, hold me accountable. First of all, I'm not being quiet. I'm saying fight this thing out to the end, to the mat, to the max. On every platform I have, as many places as I can say it, I'm being very clear about that. And I'll stand behind that no matter what. The motto of the show is shields high. It's not have a shield sometimes unless you're going to catch too much heat and then run away from it. But is CNN going to be held responsible for its direct role in creating the grounds of an attempted coup, which is what the Russia collusion lie was? Fake Tapper and others over there working with former government officials that they then paid off, put them on the payroll. Does anyone think that Brennan and Clapper are good TV analysts? Really? Oh, they had senior titles. There are a ton of people in the government that have fancy sounding titles that don't know squat. And they certainly aren't good on television. But you got to pay off Brennan, Clapper, get the leaks you can from them about what they think happened with Trump and Russia, run with them as anonymous senior administration official stories, and try to bring down the president of the United States. When you had Bush v. Gore, that, they gave intelligence briefings to Trump, but not the PDB. I'm sorry, not to Trump, to Bush. Not the presidential daily briefing, as I understand it, looking back on the history. So that's the only thing that's a president you really want to see. The other stuff is, come on. If you read the front page of the newspaper, you pretty much know what you're going to get in lower level intelligence briefings. I hate to burst everybody's bubble. There's not some team of geniuses coming up with amazing analysis and really fancy stuff that's going to change your perception of the world at the secret level. The PDB has some interesting stuff, which is the president's daily briefing, goes to the top government officials. I used to write for it regularly when I was in the CIA. But even that sometimes you're like, I kind of knew this. I'm just telling you the truth. Kind of stuff that you're like, not a big surprise. But there's such a push. And I don't ask just for rhetorical reasons the why the rush. I also really want to know. They clearly don't want this process to go forward. And ask yourself this. If we found evidence of widespread fraud, if in fact that happened, do you believe for 1 second that any of these voices, any of these names out there that are saying the president's engaged in a coup and this is all a lie, do you think that they'll apologize? You think they'll say, oh, wow, we were wrong. There is actually some fraud here. No. I can guarantee you right now what they'll say is, there's always a little bit of fraud. Not that much fraud. Let's move on. They tried to sabotage the Trump transition openly. They sent in FBI agents to go after the National Security Advisor based on the Logan Act and some flimsy, but Russia something or other. Yeah. They used the resources of the government to spy on the Trump campaign and then to try to go after members of the Trump campaign with law enforcement resources in the final weeks of the Obama administration presidency. It's the most appalling, disgraceful political scandal of my lifetime. And they want to lecture us on transition now? Supposed to sit here and hear from all these, so smart, fancy media types. It's amazing. Really, the media is full of a lot of very dumb people. It's kind of sad. I don't know what it is. It's like we get all the second and third tier students from second and third tier colleges, and then we're supposed to believe every word they say. I don't know. That's the way it is. No, we understand why they're calling for this speedy conclusion of our efforts to get to the truth, and meaning that we have to abort our efforts to get to the truth. We're not allowed to get to the actual conclusion. We're not allowed to take this to where we want to. And it's because they've already set up expectations that I don't think they'll be able to they'll meet with the public. No fraud? Really? 150 million votes cast, give or take, and it was all just fine? I mean, think about that. Yes, we're finding dozens of people who are dead who have voted already, and they were clearly dead. Obviously dead. If I believed that a president was a fascist, a dictator, and I was in a position to scan in an extra 100 ballots against the fascist, would I regret that if I did that on my deathbed? If I really believed the president was a fascist, going to round people up, put them in camps, shutter opposition press, separate families and, I don't know, be a white nationalist supporter, all the stuff that they say about him. If I believed that, wouldn't I think it was a righteous thing to do to fill out as many ballots as I could, knowing the chance of me being caught is about, just slightly above zero. And even if I were caught doing that, where are you going to be prosecuted? You really think that in these blue parts of the country, cheating against Trump in the election is going to get you a long prison sentence? No. No, friends. A Republican somehow in any of these places would find themselves on the wrong side of a 10-year federal term. But if you're a Democrat and you cheat in Philadelphia, you think the U.S. attorney in Philadelphia, when they find out about this, is really going to go after you hard on that? Nah. You think that jury is going to even convict you? Add up all of these factors of risk and the incentives. And to think that there's no cheating that has occurred with all of that, to me, is just, it's beyond belief. It is beyond belief.